Did you enjoy yourself the Super Bowl? Do you enjoy the footballs? If so, does the movie Concussion make you feel at all guilty about your choice in sports watching activity? Don't worry, it wouldn't bother me either. Right after this, I'm gonna go watch myself a Benoit match and then fall right to sleep without a second thought. But do you know what is something shameful that's coming back to haunt its fans? The XFL, which stands for... the XFL, or XFL? Yeah, because for legal reasons, Vince McMahon wasn't allowed to call his new company the Extreme Football League since another group already claimed that particular name, even though that group never really did anything of importance with it. Then again, it's not like Vince McMahon did either. Anyway, today's cheapness of pop culture is... Allow me to start by saying that I recently got to speak with someone from the up-and-coming XFL at a football event. I approached him and I said, "Hey, you're from the XFL?" And he said, "Yes, I am. Are you looking forward to the new season?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm a wrestling fan." This happened at a banquet dinner, and I have to admit that the sadness in his eyes after I said that was the sweetest dessert possible. But hey, that's just me. Maybe for all of you out there who do like the balls of foot, there's a chance that this new X is gonna give it to you. I mean, I have no idea how much of a chance that is, but, you know, anything's possible. However, if they are going to indeed make an improvement, then I think it's very important that I just remind them of some of their past mistakes in order to... Who am I kidding? This is just an excuse to pick on some really low-hanging fruit while also capitalizing on the lingering threads of Super Bowl fever that is still in the air. And with that being said, let the public bashing begin. But where to begin? Well, I think I'll just start with one of Vince's classically questionable issues: health insurance. Because with WWE wrestlers, remember, they're not employees. They are independent contractors, meaning that certain benefits tend to escape them, even if the executives in Titan Towers get them with no problems. But anyway, you know who else aren't executives? Football players. And none of the football players who played for the XFL were given any health insurance by the company. If they did have any health insurance, they would have to go out of their way and pay for it themselves. And if you're thinking that these professional athletes can afford it because they get paid the big bucks and have $1 million game and all, well, that's probably because you're confusing this football company with one that actually makes money. Now, aside from the horrors of being too cheap and too greedy to provide their athletes with something that's, much needed, the XFL did have its positives. After all, they did set their sights on being a much more fun football league. Instead of a boring old coin toss to start the game, they had a scramble for the ball, which in an early game led to an injury that kept the player out for the rest of the season. Yeah, I guess that lack of health insurance is striking again. But moving on, the XFL was much more than just a lack of healthcare. They also had some really cool and awesome looking black and red footballs, which had a dye that would come off during the games, making them really difficult to catch and throw. And while it doesn't sound like catching and throwing should be something that's all important in a game called football, it somehow surprisingly is pretty important. But you know what? Let's start focusing on the marketing outside of their really hard to handle black balls, because this is where the XFL really came through with some more bad decision making. As it turns out, Vince McMahon didn't seem to understand how much non-wrestling fans look down on wrestling, which you'd think he would considering how much he looks down on wrestling. But instead, Vince had wrestlers cut promos for the XFL, he also had bad backstage kits, and he even had a blimp crash. The blimp crash wasn't planned or anything. Unless maybe it was. You know what? It was totally worth. And if you think it wasn't, then you're just a mark. Unless, of course, it wasn't. The point is that the hijinks that a lot of us wrestling fans come to expect don't necessarily fly with the strict fans of the so-called real sports, although some did appreciate the extra opportunities that the XFL gave players to showcase their personalities, like letting them say whatever they wanted to on the back of their jerseys. However, there are some who would say that they forced things just a bit too much by trying to do things like getting the cameras on the face of the coaches during the games and really trying to make a feud out of Jesse Ventura and Hitman coach Rusty Tillman, whose nickname was the King, so if anything you figured Jerry Lawler and him should have had a beef, right? Oh yeah, that's right. Lawler admitted that even though he commentated for the XFL, he really didn't care much for football. So ultimately, I guess that's what this really is. It's a project that Vince McMahon really wanted to take off and force down people's throats. Well, I guess that sounds par for the course. And this strategy is probably why the ratings dropped, and just like McMahon tends to do when he gets desperate, he verbally attacked his competition, forgetting that when you mock something with a larger fan base, sometimes you end up mocking that larger fan base, which is probably not going to get them to come over to your side anytime soon. So just let this be a reminder, because I know some of you bought into the hype that is Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg after over a decade went by, forgetting that it totally sucked the first time around. So please, don't fall for that Vinnie Mac Kool-Aid ever again, because this really just scratched the surface of all of the XFL's failings. But alright, that's gonna do it for this one. Join me next time, and if you're still excited to see the new XFL, then just pretend that this show took an almost 20-year hiatus and is coming back after being rebranded. Maybe it'll make you like it more. Bye!